Welcome to Bed Crime Stories Podcast. I'm your host, T. To my bed crimers, hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. To anyone new here, a warm welcome. Thank you for checking out the channel. Do me a favor, if after watching the video you find you enjoyed it or you learned something, smash that like button and please consider subscribing. And if you want to support the work I do, please consider a membership. I keep the price really low, $1.99 a month. Hey, that's much less than even one drink from Starbucks. Now, without further ado, let's dig in. Seconds after director of photography Halyna Hutchins was accidentally shot on October 21st of 2021 by Alec Baldwin on the set of his movie Rust, the 42-year-old mother of one cried out to a nearby boom operator, "That was no good. That was no good at all," end quote. It's impossible to know if Halyna was just being to the point or if this was a little dark humor in a moment of the worst possible personal tragedy. We'll never know if Halyna knew that her injuries were such that she would not survive. After Halyna felt a live round rip into her chest and exit out her back, blood began to pour from her wounds. She then fell backward into the crew's head electrician. At this point, she was in a seated position, propped up against a wooden pew in the set's rustic church. Director Joel Souza, in whose shoulder the same round came to rest, crumpled to the ground and held onto his shoulder. Actor Alec Baldwin, likely confused, was looking on in horror when he shouted, "What the F just happened?" He likely was taken aback by the weapon's kickback, the loud kaboom, and the smoky scent of gunpowder. Before she was taken away by ambulance to a waiting helicopter, Halyna was treated by a set medic named Sherilyn Schaefer. It took paramedics 15 to 20 minutes to arrive, according to Schaefer. Perhaps out of shock, Halyna kept trying to remove her oxygen mask. At this point, her skin was turning gray, and when she was asked if she could feel her right leg, Halyna replied yes. When queried about her left leg, however, she said no. After that, she fell silent. When Schaefer cut off Halyna's clothes to see where exactly she'd been injured, the medic found a large wound on her right shoulder near her armpit. She also found an exit wound on Halyna's rear shoulder. The medic and a helper used gauze to try and stop the bleeding on both Hutchins and Souza. The projectile had actually ended up in Souza's shoulder. Note that Halyna, once with EMS personnel, was incorrectly intubated twice. The medical examiner said that it's possible Halyna could have survived if treated sooner, and if she'd been intubated correctly. Take a listen.
During your findings, you did a CT scan before your external examination, correct?
Yes.
Did you find evidence of prior medical intervention from Ms. Hutchins?
Yes.
And what was that evidence of medical intervention?
She had been intubated. The intubation was actually in the wrong place. It was in the esophagus. It was removed when she arrived at the hospital, but she was also re-intubated into her esophagus and not into the airway. She had also had surgical intervention. So they had opened up the chest cavities on both sides due to the presence of a gunshot wound. They had also opened up the protective covering surrounding the heart to try to do what they call manual cardiac massage to restart the heart. It's my understanding that she was pulseless upon arrival and non-responsive and not breathing.
You said that she had an intubation and another intubation. Is that right?
Yes.
And they were both in the esophagus.
Yes.
Now, an esophageal intubation can be a dangerous situation, correct?
It's an ineffective way to respirate someone or to establish air.
And in fact, can that potentially cause an anoxic situation, lack of oxygen to the brain?
Well, the injury itself is what causes the anoxic situation, but the intubation into the esophagus isn't giving adequate airway establishment.
So the esophageal intubation, do you know who performed that? Do you know who did that?
I do not.
The CPR efforts you observed, do you know who performed those?
Not off the top of my head, no. I would have to review the medical records.
Based on everything that you saw as a medical doctor, had this not taken an hour and a half, had Ms. Hutchins received more timely medical intervention, could she have possibly survived these wounds?
That's difficult for me to answer that question because I'm not a doctor who treats gunshot wounds in the chest, and I have a very skewed view regarding the lethality of gunshot wounds. So that's outside my purview.
When you were interviewed, didn't you say she possibly could have survived?
Potentially, but I'm not the best person to ask for that question because I don't treat patients.
Okay, but you previously had said that. You
Yes.
acknowledge that. Okay.
Could this story be any more infuriating? To think that Halyna's death could have maybe been prevented. 1, if safety protocols had been followed, and 2, if medical personnel had intubated her correctly from the jump. How in the world is Halyna's family supposed to process all this and get over it? Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories.